Right, here is a 1910 Stanley Steamer car. It used to belong to a doctor in Sutton in Ashfield whose maid Ethel used to get up steam for him in the morning. It's rather interesting. The doctor used it until about 1928 and was laid up, and it was found by my father and Ralph Neville and purchased for the enormous sum of 30 bob. And it's been in the family ever since. Modified, tweaked, and here it is today in very good working order, and I shall now demonstrate, providing it behaves itself, how to start the beast. Is to make sure the tyre pressures are correct, which I've done. 60 pounds front and back because they're beaded edge tyres, and if the tyre pressure gets too low, the tyres come off, which is rather interesting. Not to be encouraged. Now the first thing we do is to make sure there's enough pressure in the air bottles at the back of the car, which are pumped up to 120 psi to force fuel through the vaporising coil for the burner. So the first thing I shall do is to make sure that the pressure is up. I do this by using a foot pump on the side, down here, and there's already 115 pounds in, so a few strokes of the pedal will bring that up to 120. Without this pressure, the fire won't light properly. So we'll just keep pumping furiously until we get to there. Rather laborious, but rather important. Otherwise, problems occur. Another 10 pumps and we should be there. There we are, that's it, 120 psi. Now, right, the next thing to do is to turn on the pilot light. This takes 7 minutes to warm up. So we open the valve here, press the igniter on the steering column, and that lights the pilot light. It's registering 20 pounds, which is unnecessarily high, so we now turn this down to 10. Which is spot on, and then we keep an eye on the pyrometer here. That shows that it is now lit and it's going into the sort of green sector, and we have to leave this for 7 minutes. Right, I've got a clock on it. Now the next thing we do is to open the throttle wide, we open the cylinder drain wide, and we open the paraffin isolating valve wide. That means that the pumps, when the car's on the road, can maintain the pressure in the air bottles. When the car is standing, I use the lever here to do it. The next thing involves me getting into the car. So I shall come round to the front. The next thing is to wind up the clock. Fairly important, otherwise when you go, you don't know how long you've been out. So a few winds on that, and set the clock to the correct time, and that can pop back in there. Now here comes a fairly crucial part of the operation. When the car is parked after a run and it cools down, a vacuum's formed in the boiler which then fills itself. Now we've got to get rid of quite a lot of water before we fire up, otherwise you get a hydraulic lock and the safety valve will go. So we turn on the light that indicates the boiler water level, which is down on the floor. We open the whistle isolating valve about 10 turns. We then open the boiler drain valve on the floor, and we then depress the whistle. The water level can be seen dropping now. This allows water to drain out of the bottom of the boiler. Hence the glugging noises. There's the water level there. When I shut the valve, you can see the water level come back up again. There it is, surging up the gauge. So I'm leaving this open to drain the surplus water off. We now have to sit and twiddle our fingers for the next 4 minutes. While I'm doing that, I give a few strokes of the pump to maintain the air pressure in the bottles at the back at 120. That is the noise of water draining out of the boiler. If you don't open the whistle, there is no air coming in to replace the water that's draining out. So it's very difficult to drain without this. This is when it starts to smell bad. I might briefly explain the controls. That is the throttle or accelerator. There's no gearbox or clutch on the car. And that lets steam in and out. I'm opening it now so that when steam's got up, a bit of steam can drift through the engine to keep it warm. Water pump isolating valve. 2 pumps uphill, which means everything closed. 1 pump on the level, which involves opening that one, and no pumps downhill. Very important. This is the control that ignites the pilot light, which runs from a trembler coil under the floor. That is the main fire control, and that controls the fire, not to be opened until the pilot's been on for another 3 minutes, when the sound effects get interesting. I'm just fiddling with the water level to make sure that I'm not draining too much off. No, we can take some more now. On the floor we have the foot brake, self-explanatory. Down there is an auxiliary oiling device for going uphill. A few pumps on that will put extra oil into the engine. Critical control here. Fully forward, that emits steam all the way up, all the way down the stroke and all the way up. Full reverse, down to the floor. Mid position, what is known as notched up, that emits steam for only half of the stroke, and the rest is done on expansion, and that's your normal cruising position. But for starting off, you always work on full admission of steam all the way through. Checking the water level again. No, still quite a bit to lose. Very critical this, it's essential that the water level is kept roughly level with the floorboards, which means the boiler is 2/3 full of water, the top third is clear of the water for purposes of drying the steam in the top of the tubes before it enters the superheater coil under the boiler. Just keep a little bit of pressure on there. Another 2 minutes on the pilot light and then it should be warm enough. Checking this again. Now we're slowly getting rid of the water. That's good, excellent. I'll sit and contemplate the view. Instruments. That is the pilot light in the green at about 800 degrees, 700, 800, proves it's working okay. In other words, the little pilot light's alight. Speedometer. That is the temperature of the feed water entering the boiler. Steam pressure, which is very critical. The fire cuts out automatically at 450 on a steam automatic. The safety valve blows at 600. Pressure of the air bottles in the air bottles at the back drive forcing fuel through to the burner. Oil telltale, which blinks to tell you that the oil pump is working. Superheat temperature, normally 200 to 400 on the gauge, it's actually nearly 600 on the engine. Pressure of the burner, of the fuel actually entering the burner, which should be about 80 pounds. Pilot light pressure 10 pounds and clock. This pump, excuse me while I just check this water level of the boiler, a bit more. Ah, that's better. This pump is used for pumping paraffin, water or whatever into the car while it's stationary. On the road, the pumps that are driven off the engine crosshead provide that service. Now the water level is somewhere near... No, it's not. Have to keep draining. A bit more. Right, I think that's enough for the moment. So what I will do now is to light the main burner. Now the sound is, you have to listen to this, it's very important, the sound. You crack this open a fraction. If you open the burner too far, you flood the vaporising coil with wet paraffin and the burner goes out. So you have to feed it in very, very gently so that the fire starts gently. Here we go. About 2 notches is usually sufficient. You'll hear it. There it is. That's the main burner cut in. We just started to register on the burner gauge there. At this point, quite a lot of the pressure has gone from the air bottle, so I have to pump to keep it up. Still too much water in the boiler, let some out. Now you can hear the burner. I don't like to run the fire at more than 40 pounds to start with, because otherwise it puts too much heat stress on everything. So you are constantly fiddling with the fire control between 1 and 1.5 notches just to keep the fire nicely in. And don't forget that you've got the boiler drain open at the same time. No, a bit too much water still. That's nice. It's settling down now. And pumping to keep the pressure up on the air bottles there. Can you see that? It's essential to keep twiddling the burner just gently, the burner control to keep the fire spot on. Right. Now it can take up to 20 minutes from scratch. You can fire up in 10 minutes with the burner going flat out, but it puts an unnecessary stress on everything. So the best thing is to do it very slowly like this. always remembering to keep pumping, to keep the paraffin pressure in the boiler. I'm turning the pumps off at this stage because there's no need to pump water into the boiler. Bit more water out. It looks terribly complicated, doesn't it? That's simple. You may wonder at this stage why the pyrometer gauge for the pilot light showing 0 quite often happens when the main burner's going to start with. Not to be worried about. What you do worry about is if the burner cuts out on the road on the steam automatic, it's essential that that's in the green. If you don't, when the fire cuts in again, there's nothing to light it and you'll get a good blowback. Sorry about the noises. Just a little bit more water out. This is the point at which your maid is boiling your eggs for you before you go out on your first call of the day. Now the water level has reached the point, it's just on the top of the gauge, which is about spot on for starting up. You can just see it there. Got a good shot of that. There it is. And that's the water level that you should try to maintain on the road. This light is left on permanently because that is probably the most critical gauge on the car to watch. Another little tweak on the fire, we're up to 1.5 notches now, that's settling down nicely. Right, this is going to take another 5 minutes at least before we have any steam. This valve on the side here, when this is opened, this allows steam to pass from the boiler through the engine block, which warms it up before you pull off. So I open that a few turns and leave the throttle open so that steam can waft through the engine to keep it warm, stop condensate. At the moment, the engine has got the water drains open, which is a valve at the end of each cylinder that allows condensate to escape while the car's parked. It's very important that there's no water in the cylinders when you pull off, otherwise you get a hydraulic lock and you can knock the end of the cylinders off. More fiddling. There we are. Oh, and the horn. Terrifying. Keep the pressure up on the burner feed. The car is always parked with the back wheel jacked off the ground, so that you can turn the wheel over occasionally, move the pistons, make sure there's no water build up in there. The whistle valve is wide open at the moment. We shan't be needing that just yet. Now the pyro gauge is coming back into the safety zone. The fire's now running on 2 notches of the burner control, which is about spot on, but it's a little bit high at 45 pounds, so I'll take it down to 1.5. It's a lovely noise, isn't it? There we are. It's going very nicely now. The tire's settled down to about 45, 50. It was a little bit on the top side, but that's fine. In a few moments, we should be starting to get a trickle of steam through. Bearing in mind you've got a lot of copper and steel to warm up in the shell of the boiler. Always keep an eye on this to keep the pressure of 120 pounds on the air bottles, otherwise the fire will start to waffle and go out. There, that's the instrument there, always to keep an eye on. That one and that one there. If you make the mistake of opening the fire too wide, this is what happens, which is quite impressive when you do it on the road. Right, we'll turn it down again. When the fire's running flat out, it is prone to howling. Stanley's howl and terrify horses. Most of the time you can keep it under some semblance of control, but when you're trying to generate a lot of steam for a steep hill climb or something, you do cause the burner to howl. All Stanleys howl most of the time. Something will start to come through in a moment. Of course, if the car's been on the road all day, it's only a 5-minute job to get up to steam. It's very quick. Because the thing's hot already. That's nice. See, steady 40-pound fire on there. Hop on. We have steam. Very slowly, we're starting to have steam. So I'm going to close the throttle, but otherwise it will pop the place out. Your camera lens going to get steamed up. Pressure is to close the cylinder drain valves at the back. There are 4 drain valves underneath, which have to be closed. I'll just spin the wheel, make sure there's no water in it. No, that's fine. Close those. That's important. And now check there's no residual water in the cylinders, which is very good. As soon as we have a little bit of steam pressure, I'm going to slowly run the engine to blow any residual water out of the system, but we're not there yet. This is just steam wafting through the engine to keep it warm. I think we can open that other door now. Oh, right, you can come here, there's something I want to show you. Oh, there you are. Right, we're getting to the point now where we're almost showing steam pressure on the clock. What I'm going to do is I'll shut off the cylinder drain, open the throttle, and there's probably just enough wet steam to turn the engine over. Yeah. There we are. Now, there's the oil telltale blinking. That shows that oil is circulating, which is excellent. Now I'm running the engine, just rotating it slowly to warm it up while it's on the jack. Nice and all that, isn't it? Now, while I'm doing this, also, observe the behaviour of the pump handle. I've got both pumps on. It's gradually pulling forwards. That means the pumps are working. Oil consumption at the moment is excessive. It's doing 90 miles to the gallon. If you happen to be following the car, pull back, otherwise you'll get covered in oil. That's working a treat. I've just overhauled that. Right. Okay, we can now shut the throttle, open the cylinder drain, and take the car, apply the handbrake, take the car off the jack, there's the jack in the boot, because you might need it later. With the handle, not to be forgotten. Close the boot lid. Remove the block from the front. Remove the brake, which is holding the front wheel. And wait until we've got about 150 pounds of steam, at which point the car becomes mobile. On the road, the idea is to keep the pressure 300 to 350 pounds. We'll have to pump the paraffin pressure up considerably. Now showing 50 pounds on the top, which is just enough with any luck to move the car. So I apply full reverse, handbrake off, cylinder drain closed. Daylight. How's that? Park the car, close the throttle and open the cylinder drain. If you don't open the cylinder drain, the car will creep off on its own. Everybody sounds you right? No vibration at all. I'm not pumping any water into the boiler at the moment because it's quite full. There's your 80-pound fire. Right, interesting 3-point manoeuvre here. See the water level dropped in the boiler now. So I'm going to close the bypass and we'll just run on one pump, which will be quite sufficient. And you'll notice that the paraffin pressure is being maintained now by the pumps on the road. That's full reverse. Notch up, full forward. There we are. Now we're beginning to settle down a bit. Oil pumps blinking nicely. Driving slowly so as not to use too much steam. £300 of steam now, that's better. Oh look, terrified motor's pulling in. You happy then? Hello. Suspension to its limits. Are you alright back there, Peter? That was Andrew Jarrett. £350 of steam now, which means we're actually making steam faster than we're using it, which is a jolly good idea. Kick on full bore so that we've got lots of steam going through the cylinders to pull away. The steam pressure's rising now up to 400. At 450 pounds the burner will cut out, but it will refire automatically as soon as we pull away. Running the burner on there. Now the water level's about spot on there on the floor. It's just level with the top of the floorboards. Now see the fire cutting out? There. It's cut out on the automatic at 450 pounds, which is exactly as it should do. The pilot light is still alight, so that when the fire cuts back in again, the pilot light will reignite it. Are you frozen to death? Are you alright? Where do you want to go? Beeston? Yeah. We're now at the mercy of the traffic. Steam! There we are. Oh, sorry, but yeah, cut that. Knock it up again. Right, the fire's back on the floor again now, so we can go. Fire, water level okay, pilot's alright, 350 psi. One pump is just maintaining the water level where it should be. We're having a little help. Now, listen to the change in exhaust note when I go from half to full. It's like putting on reheat, it's great fun. We're going this way for one of our friend Josie lives down here, and I always blow the top when they go out. Josie lives on the right hand. Water levels maintaining nicely on one pump. Miles an hour. Going up a slight incline, so back when the pressure's down about 250 is to blow the gauge fillers down. In other words, pass steam at high speed through the water gauge, blow the rubbish out of it. To do this, you raise the bonnet. Lean down and close the tap that allows water into the bottom of the gauge, so that when you open it, what it does is blow steam through top of the gauge, thus. Good. That's blown most of the rubbish out of the gauge. You then open the isolated valve. Sorry, let it fall down. When you reopen the gauge, water back in again. I'm just going to give it another blast of luck. Right. Now in theory, I just open this tap again. Oh, that's it. Open the bottom tap. That allows the water back into the gauge. Now comes the exciting bit, blow all the water out of the boiler. Close the tap on the top of the water gauge to stop the steam blowing water through the gauge out, since what you want to do is to blow all the rubbish out of the bottom of the boiler. Which we will now do. You ready for this? Great fun. Shocking waste of energy.